You're listening to The Authenticity Show, where you get to eavesdrop on great conversations about health, creativity, and the quest for excellence. Your hosts are Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. But before we get started, I'd like to remind you to please subscribe to The Authenticity Show wherever you get your podcasts and find us on social media. That means like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and check out our YouTube page where, by the way, you can see video. We recently started having video because Dannie Hofmann joined the team as our videographer. And so if you're just listening to this in audio form, please know that you can see our beautiful faces on YouTube. And you can find all of our episodes on our YouTube channel. And by the way, this is a very special episode. This is our 100th episode. Man, it's crazy how the time goes by. 100th episode. And this has definitely been a labor of love. We love doing this, and we thought for our 100th episode, we should have a special topic, and our topic today is death. Death is a fact of life. It's inevitable as far as we know. And so here's an episode, thoughts and feelings about death, various cultural and religious perspectives on death, and some poetry as well, both original and classic.
Here we are.
Yes.
Our 100th episode.
Can you believe it? 100.
Amazing.
I know. It doesn't feel like it.
No, but it's been a journey.
It has. It really has. Yeah. Yeah. It's, episode 100. I mean, it's really no more special than any other episode, but we've just decided to make it special.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to deal with a topic tonight that we have spoken about many, many times, and we knew that someday we were going to do this topic for one of the shows, and I think in our own ways we both felt like we weren't ready.
Yeah, and yet it's unavoidable.
It sure is, yeah. And so at some point you just do it anyway, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like it or not.
Yeah, that's right.
So we might as well try our best to like it.
Yeah, I mean, this episode is going to happen anyway, so let's make art out of it.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, let's make art out of it. So yeah, we are talking about death. This is the death episode. And I'm sure you and I have both thought about it on our own as we were preparing for this topic tonight. And I think I'll go ahead and start with something.
Okay.
I was thinking about death, and I realized that most of us, all of us, were children when we first were introduced to the idea. And so it was a child's understanding of what it was and what the word meant. And sometimes there is fear, a child's fear that gets associated with the word, the concept.
There is, but even before that, there's this sort of there's a sort of a lack of ability to relate to it before there's fear. There's a sense like there's a dissociative kind of experience with the word, I think, before there's any fear of it, because you don't know what it is. You can't relate to it. You've never seen it before.
Yeah,
people talk about it, and this is the thing, with kids and death, and it doesn't become real for them until they have gone through it somehow. Through watching a family member die or something,
Yeah, or I mean, my early memories of death were I had an aunt who passed away, and that was one of the peak moments of my life. I was watching how all the adults responded to it.
Yeah, because you don't know how to respond. I mean, I remember laughing at many a funeral.
Yeah,
which is socially inappropriate for some, even though we could argue as adults, as intelligent, wiser adults who've gone through a lot, we know that everybody deals with grief differently.
Oh yeah,
but
sure.
It's not considered kosher to laugh at a funeral, even though most of the time it's just discomfort and nervousness that causes the laughter.
Totally.
But on the other hand, there's a certain wisdom in it too.
Yeah.
Laughing at a funeral.
Oh yeah, I think it's great. I remember when my aunt passed away. I was very, very young, and I was at the funeral, and I remember just being a little kid bored in the church pew, and kind of climbing around. And I climbed over the back seat, and I looked, and I saw my sister crying, and I saw somebody who she was with was also crying. I think it was a friend, And I remember being a little bit surprised, like, wow, they're crying. And as a child, I was perfectly at ease at that funeral until I saw these older people that are important to me, when I saw their reaction at the funeral. And I realized, oh, this is supposed to be a sad thing. And I felt a little bit of sadness and emotion for the first time about the whole topic. So I just think filtering it through a child's understanding has an impact for how we approach the concept of death for the rest of our life.
It does.
And, it's okay to go ahead and take the innocence of childhood, when we look at the concept of death. And it's also okay to go ahead and reassess some of our misunderstandings that we may have had when we were a child about it.
Yeah, I think the first painful thing for me about death was realizing that I wouldn't be able to connect with that person the same way. That they were going to be gone from my life. That sunk in, that I can't just see them again, hug them again, kiss them again.
Yeah,
they're gone in a way.
Yeah, right.
Except in a memory. But I think that's where the pain starts, isn't it? This idea that you're not going to see them again, that they're not really going to be there. You can't hold them. You can't tickle them or be tickled by them. It's
like when they're gone, and that's there's quite a space, that's left over there. Something that I learned over the past, year or so is something that Eckhart Tolle said. He said, when something or somebody dies, he said, if you pay a little more close attention to the space that they used to occupy, even though they're gone, if you look deeper into that, you can see that there's a sense of peace there. There's a sense of goodness or joy. I'm paraphrasing, of course. I just thought that was a beautiful idea, because we become very aware of the absence of that person, but there's also something that is left in that absence. And that can be worth paying attention to.
It's no surprise that this has been such a subject for supernatural beliefs, religious beliefs, mystical experiences, the ponderings of people looking for a way of resolving a seemingly unanswerable question. What happens? Where are they now? Why? All that kind of stuff. It comes up, this existential kind of quest for trying to understand, and death confronts everyone at some point. It's going to be right up next to you. It's going to be right in your face, and there's just no way around it. Some people go quite a long time without it. I've known a few who went a long time. I'm not one of those, but they go into their late 40s before they see anybody die.
Oh yeah.
Or longer.
Definitely. I had early exposure to death, and I'm very thankful for my profession. As an occupational therapist, I did geriatric rehabilitation. I spent about 6 years working at a skilled nursing facility, and I'm choosing these words on purpose. I had the wonderful opportunity of being around so many people that died. And that is not a bad thing. That's not a sad thing. That is a privilege to be around people that are dying. It's a real privilege.
Yeah.
And there were people that would have died alone if I wasn't working there. And I had the opportunity to sit down with them and just hey, somebody's here. We didn't know each other, but somebody's here. You know what I mean? And to share in that experience is a very, very, very sacred experience. To be there when somebody passes.
It really is. What you're saying reminds me of the funerals that I've done for others. People that I didn't necessarily know, but I knew the people who asked me to do the funeral.
Yeah.
And it is a sacred experience. It's an honor to be able to connect with the people who are still loving that person.
Yeah.
And to be in a position of helping them to create a ceremony to allow themselves to adjust to the changes.
Yeah.
Because it's a big change. This person is no longer a part of their life in that way.
Yeah.
And it's so overwhelming for people who are close to that person that having a professional like you or myself in a position like that to be a conductor of an experience is it's very important. And it's a role that has been around for a very long time. a very long time. It's the role of a priest in a way. It's the role of a healer, of a priest, of a leader of a ceremony. And even, I think, as an occupational therapist, there is still some of that in your profession.
There is.
You're conducting them in a professional way, and it's special and sacred.
Yeah. And something I think I certainly want to talk about tonight is the concept of the death drive, the death instinct. Because quite often, we have a life instinct. We have this instinct to try to preserve our own life, right? And I like to think that is the job of the body. The body is doing its job. It knows how to protect itself.
The prime directive.
It does. It is
the unconscious.
To stay alive, right?
Yeah.
But seldom do we acknowledge that there is also a death instinct, that there is a death drive. And this was something that Sigmund Freud talked about, the death drive. And it's this idea that things that are alive, in addition to wanting to promote their own life, they also have an instinct to promote their own death. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in acknowledging that and seeing that's there. Things that are animated and alive also have a drive to go back to their just basic organic state of what they were before they were alive. And one of the things I like about this idea, and it's a little bit of a controversial idea, the death instinct, is it real? Does it exist? Freud, and of course, Freud has to weave it into sex, of course, naturally, right?
Because Freud.
Yeah, but there's something to it. The life instinct is associated with sexual drive because sex and life go together, right? And the death drive, the death instinct, is very much associated with stopping that compulsive, repetitive need, whether it's the repetitiveness of sex, the compulsive repetitiveness of sex itself, the act itself, or just the act of the cells of the body reproducing and trying to maintain themselves and keep going. It's kind of comforting, I think, to acknowledge that we also have an instinct to help us die when the time comes.
La petite mort.
Yes.
The little death.
A little death.
I mean, at some point, in intercourse, there's a desire to find culmination.
Yeah.
To find a stop.
Right.
There's
the compulsive repetitiveness of it.
And then to feel completeness.
Completion. Yeah.
And then there's the surrender also in that completeness, which is the surrender that happens emotionally, after that. Yeah. That moment where two people being intimate reach a fiery pitch of release, and then there's the quietude, there's the letting go, there's the maybe even the sleep or the stillness, the post-sexual trance that happens after orgasm, where your mind just wants to sort of float and drift, and go into a dream, or to feel like you could maintain that final feeling for as long as possible. Yeah. I mean, maybe that's related to the death instinct you're talking about, like the desire to feel completion, to feel like you can end something. The ending can be beautiful too.
It can, yeah. Did you ever go on a wonderful vacation, maybe when you were a kid, or even as an adult, you go on a great trip, it's a wonderful vacation, you had a great time, and you know it's going to end. But when the time comes and it's just about time to go home, it can also feel good to go home. Mm-hmm. I know most people have had that experience where, vacation's coming to an end, but there's also kind of a nice hope in going home. Yeah. Going home can be nice. Going home is necessary for there to be another vacation. Mm-hmm. And it's also okay to go home. And I'm sort of hoping that death is like that.
I hope so too. I've thought about extremely prolonged life, and I've thought about eternal life quite a lot.
Yeah, me too.
I feel a pretty endless sense of curiosity about things. So it's hard to imagine ever running out of things to study, learn, do. However, it is possible, I think, to get to a point where even as an ancient being, that I might say, I'm longing to no longer walk on the planet. Even if everything were peachy keen and peaceful, and there's going to come a point maybe. At some point.
Yeah, where you start to feel like it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to go,
Yeah.
And things. It's also okay to not want that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something I really feel compelled to touch on tonight. Is, I grew up with a lot of in the 70s and 80s and being involved in an Indian guru organization and things like that. You get around a lot of spiritual people, and I would often hear things like, "I'm not afraid to die," death is natural. And you hear all these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I also want to point out that we have to be careful because it's also okay to be afraid to die. It's also okay to acknowledge that, yeah, I am afraid because I really don't know what it is. And I think it's okay for all of us to acknowledge together that, we don't know. We have our ideas. We have our hopes. We have, some of us are even convinced that we know what's going to happen, but ultimately we don't really know. And it's okay for us to just kind of do that together. We have each other. We're all going to find out together.
Yeah. On that topic, I've gone back and forth between feeling comfortable with my own death and feeling totally uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Me too.
There have even been times when I felt like I wanted it for very sad, grievous reasons.
Yeah.
So that there's every kind of emotional experience I can imagine with it.
Yeah.
The idea of excitement, exploration, what's possible, and then the idea of total fear, like, no, I don't want this to end, and even grief and sadness. I don't want to not have my friends anymore close to me. I don't want to, not have these things that are important, or my own life, or just even the pure fear, the choking, panicking fear that you get when you feel like you're about to die, like you're being held underneath a wave at the beach, during the riptide, or you almost fall off of a ledge somewhere.
Totally.
Those are moments, or you're on the freeway, right? Yeah. You've had that, that situation on the freeway.
Yeah.
There are moments where you're like, oh fuck, I don't want to die.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So those can come from very different places.
Yeah.
Inside.
And it's okay. Sure. It's okay for both of those things to be there. It's okay when the time comes. If somebody's not afraid of dying, I think that's great. I just think it's also okay to be afraid.
You hope it lasts.
Yeah, you hope it lasts. Definitely. Yeah. I love getting older because it beats the alternative. You know what I mean? I mean, I want to see how this ends. Or at least to see how this body ends. So one of the things that I've been thinking about is about death really being a switching of perspective. It's a different perspective. And I've been influenced a lot by Taoist cosmology, the ideas of, in Taoism they say that there was just the Tao, there was nothingness, just the Tao, the potential for everything. And then something in that nothingness was created. And they call that the first differentiation. And then that first differentiation, there was nothing, and then there's something. And I've been thinking about this. It's like, if there was truly nothingness, and then nothingness created somethingness, then wasn't somethingness the death of nothingness? So we killed nothingness by existing. And that's okay.
It's like killing off the quantum superpositions of the atoms. Once it shows up, it's all those other ones aren't.
Yeah.
All those other possibilities they cease to be.
Yeah. And it's only fair that we trade. So at some point, we have to go, and then we go back to nothingness, and nothingness wins again. At least in our little spot. So maybe this is a good time to get into this and talk about it. So I wrote a poem.
Oh, great.
And it's called Temporarily Forever. Nothingness didn't last forever. Empty space was filled, hence severed. Eternity became untethered. Timeless being was seen, then measured. Now occupied by dark and light, nothingness performed a sleight. Highs made lows and darks made brights. Slow made fast and feeble made might. Zero made one, one made two. One singularity split in two. One could be zero, or one could be two. Think about it. It's weird, but true. Where does number one go when it disappears? Zero. Isn't that clear? Zero makes one. One makes zero. Life, death, villain. hero. We take turns being ones and zeros. Creator, created, Shakta, Shivam. Creator, sustainer, ether, atoms. Serpents, gardens, Eves, and Adams. Life loathes death. Death loves life. We should be afraid of death. Death loves life. Daytime, nighttime, good times, strife. Anicca, anatta, death, life. When death comes, you should claw and fight. It's your nature, your duty, your turn, your right. Life comes back. It's okay to love life. Love is the unity in death and life. Love while you live, love while you die. Love is a fulcrum between death and life. Life, connective. Death, corrective. Life and death are switched perspectives. What is the same in death and life? Love. Isn't that right? Die with love. Love with life. Live with death. Die with life. Somethingness can't last forever. Nothingness does not mean never. Pause. Temporary is forever.
That was awesome. I kept hearing 100th all throughout that, all the ones and zeros and nothings. And yeah, I just kept hearing the fact that it's our 100th episode in that.
Yeah. Cool.
Wow.
Oh, that's neat. That's neat.
Beautiful journey.
Yeah. Thank you. The Buddhist monks have a meditation where they observe bodies. They observe corpses that are rotting. And it's interesting because in Buddhism, they have a type of mindfulness called maranasati, which means establishing awareness with Mara. And Mara was the god of death and desire, you know. And that's more the idea of just contemplating death, that death could happen any time, and it's supposed to be used as motivation to continue to pursue, meditation. But in the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, which is the Buddha's great sermon on the establishment of awareness, there's a section where he's talking about this, about observing rotting corpses. And interestingly enough, it's really considered a meditation associated with the body, not death. And it's just that idea that and I have a few little excerpts from it. I'm not going to read it all, but it's a bit morbid. But what they say here is that there are these 9 stages that the corpse goes through when it's dying, right? And the first one is a corpse that is swollen, blue, and festering.
Wow.
Then the second one is a corpse that is being eaten by crows, hawks, vultures, dogs, jackals, or by different kinds of worms, right? And then it continues to go down. I'm not going to read them all. And then number 8 is a corpse that is reduced to bones that are more than a year old and heaped together. And then the last one, the 9th stage, is a corpse that is reduced to bones, gone rotten, and become dust. And there is a certain amount of wisdom in the way that they do that, and one of the things that they say, that the awareness that is supposed to be established by doing this meditation is this. I'm gonna read this. This body of mine too is of the same nature as that body. That this body is going to become like that body, and has not got past the condition of becoming like that body. It's very interesting. Yeah,
that's not an uncommon practice for, Eastern religions and mysticism. It's more uncommon for the modern Western mind, but if you think about during the Renaissance period, Shakespearean times, people lived in the average person lived in a one-room house. And so there'd be grandpa or grandma on the table, wrapped in posies, right? And dead, stiff, basically, on a table. There'd be the children in the bed, and then the parents often having sex in the evening and then going to sleep.
Yeah.
So everything, sex and death and life were all under one roof.
Happening in the same room, yeah.
And I think a lot of that sense of humor and the morbidity and the matter-of-factness in the language was reflected in some of the Shakespearean plays and just some of the poems from the time.
Yeah.
These things were just kind of accepted. I mean, that's not really what we think of Western culture now.
Yeah, but it was Western culture.
But it was, and I remember as a kid learning about the Tibetan practice, and where they it's the duty of the family to cut up the body of their newly departed family member and to go to the edge of a cliff and to feed the body parts to the vultures.
Oh, wow.
And that's part of the impermanence teaching is to the children and the parents are together, cutting up the body parts of their recently deceased family member and then tossing them out with prayers and with thankfulness, recognizing the cyclical nature of death and life and how our bodies contribute to the body of the planet.
Right.
I think that recognition of death in daily life doesn't seem to make them more morbid.
No.
I mean, when you look at the average Tibetan, there's a lot of smiles, there's a lot of joy, there's a kind of a sense of really being in the moment.
Yeah, totally.
There's a lot of generosity and goodness there. The level of happiness is higher, I think, than in some Western cultures.
Yeah, I think so too.
There's more of that kind of recognition of what is real.
Yeah,
And appreciating even the small, significant things that are going on, while you're alive.
Yeah.
And death does do that. Death creates a contrast. It creates a contrast that allows you to see things.
It sure does.
In a very different way.
Yeah, it sure does.
And even the tantric tradition has a tradition of meditating on dead bodies.
Yeah.
And then there's the samurai tradition of every day meditating on being boiled alive in oil and flayed, your skin flayed from you and your head beheaded and this meditation so that you could be so flat, so unmoved by the idea of death that you could merely live more strongly with intention and not be swayed by the fear of death, so that you could practice your martial arts, that you could wield your sword, you could be the warrior, using your discernment, using your focus, but without the fear holding you back or causing you to make unnecessary mistakes. So that was very much a part of the samurai tradition as well.
I recall in the Hagakure, the book of the samurai, the very first thing he teaches is that I'm already dead.
Yes.
I'm like, basically he's a dead man walking. He's already dead. So if you start with that, then you can face things. Yeah,
and there's a truth to that. There's kind of a courage that comes along with thinking that way.
There sure is.
Some people who maybe come from a more flighty-dighty, fluffy kind of point of view won't see that right away.
Yeah. Sure.
But if you just give it a chance, really start with that idea, it does change your perspective quite a lot.
It does. And, you just mentioned perspective, and that was kind of one of my personal themes tonight, and it was in the poem, is that death is a changing of perspective. And this might be a good time, if you're up to it. I have a little kind of a guided meditation that might be kind of fun to go through.
Absolutely.
That's about perspective, and so I'm gonna read this, and so anybody who wants to close their eyes and do this, right? Go for it. Yeah. Death as a changing perspective. So we're going to do this visualization exercise and take a moment to feel the reality of your physical heart. It's living inside your chest. Even though the heart lives in the blackness of the chest, it does not experience blackness. Instead, the heart experiences joy excitement, passion, and love. Shift your awareness now to the brain. It lives its life in the blackness of the skull, but it does not experience that blackness. Instead, it experiences all the light and color the day has to offer. Using this brain of yours, picture this story I'm about to tell. Follow along with the light and colors that your brain is capable of imagining. Imagine that you are person A, standing on a path and seeing that path through your own eyes. You, person A, are destined to vanish in a few moments. Also imagine there was another person, person B, standing off to the side and watching you, person A, as you stand on your path, just as you vanish. Poof. Person A is gone, and person B sees it happen. Also off to the side is a third person, person C. Person C now witnesses the vanishing of person B. Poof. Person B is now gone. You may notice that as you are seeing this story unfold, you take on the perspective of each new person who witnesses the disappearance of the next. Note this as we continue. Person C vanishes next, but instead of another person seeing it happen, this time it is the ocean who perceives the vanishing of the person. Even though you may not fully understand how the ocean perceives, it does perceive. It perceives the vanishing of person C. Poof. Person C disappears. And now you have the perspective of the ocean, somehow, some way. Even oceans are destined to vanish. This time it's planet Earth who witnesses the vanishing. In a silent flash, the ocean is gone and the Earth sees it. Then planet Earth vanishes, and it's the sun who sees it. Next, it is the vast expanse of space who sees the sun vanish, along with all the stars and planets in the multiverse, without even a sound, nothingness. It is empty space alone that sees, that perceives, that knows. It's dark, cold, and empty. But darkness, coldness, and emptiness is not perceived. The same way that your heart perceives warmth and joy, in the same way your brain perceives light and color. Instead of blackness, instead of the blackness of empty space, you, as the universe, perceive only joy, excitement, passion, love, and the overwhelming motivation to create something and to keep creating. Somehow in your heart is the growing power of creation preparing to explode again, and bang! You have ended nothingness by creating somethingness. You have come full circle from inside to outside to way outside, only to end up right where you started, at the residence of your physical heart again, residing in the perfection of small blackness inside your chest. Coming back to the reality of your body, prepare now to return to wakefulness by carrying that light from the chest up to the eyes. And when you are ready, open them and see with all your perspectives.
I love it.
Yeah.
That really takes you. It's beautiful how synchronicity works, because I got an email today that when I read it to you, I think you're going to see the parallels here.
Oh,
it's very short.
Great. Okay.
But I love how this works.
Okay.
So it's speaking to me, but I'm going to use your name instead.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm telling you.
You tell me. Yeah.
Satch, what if there was only you, and the rest of the world was make-believe imagination? If even the people in your life were drawn there or faded away based upon your thoughts, would it then be easier for you to grasp the true meaning of limitless? Would you then believe that you were alone and that you alone make reality? Satch, the rest of the world is make-believe imagination, and all the people in your life are there or they fade away based upon your thoughts. Wow, that was easy. Tally-ho, limitless.
Oh my God, that's great. That's great. I love that. Oh
Right?
my goodness.
I just got that today.
Oh,
so it's just,
how
I
perfect.
just love how that happens.
Yeah, how totally perfect. Wow. My goodness. Thank you. Thanks for remembering that.
And you know, I don't know if this is really the Buddha that was quoted here. This was supposed to be a Buddha quote. I don't know for sure. I seem to remember Stephen Covey saying something like this, but he probably didn't come up with it either. But I'm going to read it anyway.
Yeah, let's hear it.
The thought manifests as the word. The word manifests as the deed. The deed develops into a habit, and the habit hardens into character. So watch the thought and its ways with care, and let it spring from love, born out of compassion for all human beings, as the shadow follows the body. As we think, so we become. Now I know that last, so we think, as we think, so we become. I think that's definitely a piece of a quote from the Buddha directly.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the other part. But,
Sure.
But still.
Yeah. Oh, it's
But
great.
still.
It's still great. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Wow. Amazing. Yeah. That's great.
I will attempt to read you the poem that I wrote.
Yes. I purposely didn't read it when I had the chance on Facebook because I wanted to hear it for the first time from you.
The life of the living, the death of the dead. When life runs its course, I'll simply fly away, levitating light, drifting into the fray. A humble death, feeling like quiet sunset, darkness into stillness, nocturnal moonset. Letting go of the fear and loving for loving's sake, living and giving from the heart with nothing to take. Piecing the peace that some pieces make, integrated for our whole wholeness' sake. Emptiness is usefulness, like the spoke of a wheel. 0 plus life equals 0, death, life, and the real. That old chestnut impermanence, a bitter pill to swallow. It's a tougher nut to crack when what's left feels hollow. Since everything without fail is destined to crumble, does this not quash all false pride and make you feel humble? Our judgments are just delusions of perception, taken for granted almost without exception. Memories are lost on the dead but lives on in the living. All opposites reconciled, a universe forgiving. There need not be any worry about the future, nor grief about the past. Just expand into the present, aware that nothing will last. And we can bow a deep bow to this emergent now, surrendering even the needy need to know how. For whoever takes themselves lightly eventually flies, and each resistance released is an escaping device. Feeling now flexible about all my definitions, I surrender and begin releasing my ambitions. Meaning-making is what organized the chaos. From nadir to zenith, a divine cosmic cross. Axis mundi, Bifrost, Althoen, Merkaba of light. I rise from the ashes and the phoenix takes flight. The void is the womb in which I rest. The world, sphere of my will, manifest.
Wow, Carlos. Wow. the speechlessness and silence that I feel after hearing that, I think says it all.
Yeah.
There's a stillness I get behind that, what you wrote, and I think that's more valuable than even talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow, that was beautiful.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I think it's good that we both did that.
I think so too.
For this.
Yeah, for sure. This is a special topic.
It is.
It's a special episode, and I'm glad we finally had the courage to do this, because I think there was a time in the past we didn't feel courageous enough to do this. Maybe.
Yeah, it felt too heavy.
Yeah, it did.
It felt too heavy. I know in my own personal life, I think I just reached a point of death saturation.
Yeah.
Far too many people died in the last few years in my life.
Yeah.
And a few of them in extremely tragic ways,
yes.
not in normal ways.
Yes, which I'm aware of, that maybe our listeners aren't, but I'm aware.
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's a hard thing to talk about when you have a deep connection with the people who pass.
Yes, it is.
It's hard. It takes time.
Mm-hmm.
It takes time to feel ready to share that in an open way with everyone. It's different to share with you or with our close circle.
Yeah, but out.
But yeah,
in a recording, it's tough.
It is. Even just holding the awareness of it for any length of time. Requires a steadiness to be able to do that.
Yeah. That's for sure.
There's a lot of pain associated with it.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about a recent death that is a little more manageable.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same as a human, but my little cat Neo, my little guy Neo, just a couple weeks ago, we had to put him down. And, you feel all the same emotions and loss, and all that you normally feel when a human dies.
Mm-hmm.
Except I think sometimes with a pet, it can be really painful to lose a pet. But we also get the same benefits in terms of talking about the issues that come up when it's a pet.
Mm-hmm.
And, after Neo died that night, I had to take him down. He was suffering, and I had to take him down to have him. I had to take him to the 24-hour emergency animal ER to have him put down.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that was a little bit tough is because of the pandemic, right? We're recording this during the pandemic. I couldn't go in with him. I mean, I could have, but he was in a tough situation, and they would have had to have moved him to a special room. And I talked to the doctor on the phone, and we decided that it probably he was in a lot of distress. Mm-hmm. And it was better to just do it right then and there and not prolong things. But it still comes back to something that I've talked about a lot before. Mm-hmm. And you and I have had this discussion, is that when you grieve over somebody that you've lost, it is still a form of love.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of my main things that I go back to whenever I lose people that I care about, or people close to me lose somebody that they care about. That's one of the first things I like to remind them. If it's a situation where they're looking for advice, is just to get into that idea of, remember that loving that person, and grieving for that person are the same.
Mm-hmm.
It's grieving is loving, and it's such a powerful thing to realize.
Yeah, as they say, grieving is our way of showing how much we loved them.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it sure is.
It's definitely a way of showing
how
much we love them. May not be the only way, but...
Yeah, I'd say in a 7-course meal, it needs to be there.
Yeah, I mean, there's also the living for that we do sometimes, living for someone.
Oh, living for someone.
Yeah,
yeah. We do that.
The kinds of things like when a child becomes more determined, to achieve something in their life that they know their parents would be extremely proud of them for.
Yeah.
That's living for, and that's another one of the hidden benefits, or maybe the silver linings that can be found inside of a dark death, is that remembrance that when we choose to step it up, we can also choose to step it up for that person who's passed.
Yeah.
I remember there were a couple of things that I felt were really necessary for me to do when my Eva died.
Yes. Yes.
There are things I needed to do, and one of those things I think I mentioned to you is just not putting up with shit. Certain kinds of shit from people.
Certain kinds of shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember talking about that.
Yeah, there's certain people whose behaviors I think I would have tolerated more. Attempting to take a high road or some silly thing like that, instead of just saying no, fuck no.
Yeah.
Eva wouldn't have this. Eva would say, Eva would have said, hell no, and I'm going to honor that.
Yeah. Now it's your duty to do that, to carry that torch.
Yeah. Not putting up with any shit.
Yeah. Totally. Totally. It's those things are beautiful and they make our lives better. We lost a mutual friend, Vince, our good friend Vince. That was a very tragic, difficult loss.
It really was.
And so many times I've thought that I have a duty to enjoy so many things that he would have enjoyed. And now I get to have double the amount of enjoyment, and it's my duty to do that for him. So I get to enjoy more, in Vince's honor. So,
Yeah, and it's been lovely to connect with his mom, isn't it?
Yeah,
and some of his other friends, that knew him so well and stuff too, that we didn't know before.
People that we didn't know.
Yeah, and just so much love. That's what bonds us together is the fact that we shared a love for somebody who's not here anymore.
Totally. It is a bonding thing. Yeah. In your poem, you had alluded to that Taoist, or the part of the Tao Te Ching where 30 spokes share the wheel's hub, but it's the center space that makes it useful.
Yes.
It's almost like in Vince's passing, the empty space that he left behind became useful, and it brought us together with other people that we wouldn't have known.
That's right.
And it's caused us to reflect on our own lives in a different way. So there is a certain usefulness there. We don't seek that. We don't seek for that friend not to be there. But if the friend isn't going to be there, then it almost dishonors them not to utilize it. So it's okay for there to be usefulness in the passing of people we love.
Well, I've said to you before how I like the cold and why I like the cold.
Tell me again.
I sort of came up with this idea that the cold makes you decide.
Oh yes, the cold makes you decide.
Yeah, it forces you to decide, and so the cold is cruel in a way, but it's also that cruelty that is maybe the word cruel isn't the best word for it, but I like it. It sounds dramatic.
Okay.
But it's the idea that sharp contrast forces you to make really clear decisions. As a result. I mean, it's a fact that we have to deal with cold.
Yeah, it is.
It's just a fact. It's a factor of the way the universe works. Is that there is the absence of heat.
Yes.
And life requires heat in order to survive.
Yeah.
And so there's that element that in the Germanic, the Isa or ice, right? That old idea that that's a cosmic force. The idea of contraction, freezing, aka death. But it's also this primordial frozen state that it represents, out of which life comes.
Yeah.
So when I have taken cold showers or jumped into a snowy, ice melting river or something like that, or done an ice bath, I psych myself into it because it makes me feel more alive.
It does. Yeah. It makes you feel more alive. Yeah. Well, because it defines you in that moment. You're like, you are warmth and life, and it's freezing cold.
Yeah.
And it helps you see that you're there, that you're you. You know what I mean? It's defining. I've always thought that the cold defined me. Like if it's freezing cold outside and I walk out and I'm cold and I don't have a jacket, I know where I am and I know where the cold is.
Yeah. And it is a real prompt to decide, okay, put the metal to, the pedal to the metal kind of thing, as far as your own decision to be mindful.
Yeah.
Because you can freak out, or you can be really, really focused, and you can learn to accept even that thing which is really uncomfortable.
Totally.
In that acceptance, you can sometimes gain a mastery over it, which is a very satisfying feeling.
Yeah.
For a time, you don't feel like the cold is such a big bad monster after all. You can feel
sure.
that the cold is actually something totally conquerable.
Yeah.
And that's a very powerful feeling.
Yeah, that is. Yeah.
Because you get into your own stillness and you get into your own root. You realize that, we can influence a hell of a lot more than we think.
Yeah. The small times I've overcome cold, because you know how bad I hate the cold. I hate the cold, right?
Yeah.
I like to think that warmth helps me decide, right? But at the same time, the times I have overcome it, you do feel alive afterwards. You feel invigorated. It's powerful. It's so powerful. Now I know that this is a special night, being 100th episode. It wouldn't be a special episode if we didn't read something from Khalil Gibran.
Oh, we got to.
So a little background. Anybody who has not read Khalil Gibran, stop what you're doing and read Khalil Gibran immediately.
Yeah.
Like when this episode is finished, you finish listening to this episode or watching it, pick up The Prophet by Khalil Gibran and read it. It is so packed full of wisdom. It's unbelievable.
It really is. And our friendship episode, there was a reading on friendship.
Yeah, we read the friendship poem from The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. And so let me just set the background. So in this book, The Prophet, what happens is the prophet is about to leave, and he's been in this town for a long time, and the people have grown to love him. And it seems to be a metaphor for death. He's down at the shore, and he's waiting for the ship to come get him. And it's really a metaphor for the fact that he's dying, and these are all his disciples around him. And this is their last chance to ask the master his wisdom on these different topics. And here it goes. Are we ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm always
here we
ready for
go.
him.
All right. The Prophet on Death. Then Almitra spoke, saying, "We would ask now of death." And he said, "You would know the secret of death, but how shall you find it unless you seek it in the heart of life? The owl whose night-bound eyes are blind unto the day cannot unveil the mystery of light. If you would indeed behold the spirit of death, open your heart wide unto the body of life. For life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one. In the depth of your hopes and desires lies your silent knowledge of the beyond. And like seeds dreaming beneath the snow, your heart dreams of spring. Trust the dreams, for in them is hidden the gate to eternity. Your fear of death is but the trembling of the shepherd when he stands before the king whose hand is to be laid upon him in honor. Is the shepherd not joyful beneath his trembling, that he shall wear the mark of the king? Yet is he not more mindful of his trembling? For what is it to die, but to stand naked in the wind, and to melt into the sun? And what is it to cease breathing, but to free the breath from its restless tides, that it may rise and expand and seek God unencumbered?
Seeds underneath the snow. I love that image.
Yeah.
Just love that.
Yeah. Trust the dreams. Trust your dreams.
All right. This is a poem by Rumi.
Okay.
I died as a mineral and became a plant. I died as a plant and rose to animal. I died as animal and I was human. Why should I fear? When was I less by dying? Yet once more I shall die human, to soar with angels blessed above, and when I sacrifice my angel soul, I shall become what no mind ever conceived. As a human I will die once more, reborn. I will with the angels soar, and when I let my angel body go, I shall be more than mortal mind can know. I love that. When was I ever less by dying?
God, that is so amazing.
So cool.
Gosh, Rumi's phenomenal.
As Jim Morrison said, death makes angels of us all and gives us wings where we had shoulders, smooth as ravens' claws. I have a theory It's not anything but a theory. It's based in some experiences that I've had, called the mystical experiences, I guess.
Okay.
Not here to prove this to anyone else. I'm just going to share what my experience is.
Yeah. Let's experience it.
I have a strong suspicion about what happens when we die.
Okay.
And it's very similar to a movie that I really, really like, which had Robin Williams in it. It was called What Dreams May Come.
Oh, love it.
Yeah.
Love
and
it.
The underlying idea that I have sensed is that there are these different modes of awareness that we can connect with. And in those modes of awareness, our consciousness can connect to, let's say, a frequency. Okay. And in that frequency, there is an existence that exists on that frequency. Okay. And as you know, frequencies can be things like radio waves, or they can be light. It can be things that are totally invisible, right? Yeah. And as well as indetectable by our senses, right? So there's a whole range of what frequency can mean, scientifically speaking, from one end of the spectrum to the other, you get all of the experience of matter and energy, right? And when you incorporate the idea of dimensionality, multiple dimensions, parallel dimensions, multiverse of things, when you talk about what we said earlier about quantum superpositions, the potentials that are there, then what you're getting is a simultaneous existence in the same space and time. And my strong suspicion is that when we die, the level of consciousness we are at when we die, which is also the result of the way we lived, propels our awareness into a place where there is a continuance of awareness that may or may not resemble what it seems to be when we're in our bodies, but that there is a continuity of consciousness of some kind, because matter and energy cannot be destroyed. It can only transform. We know that, right?
Yes.
That's not something they've really disproven.
Yeah.
It's like one of the laws.
I think we also intuitively know it to
we
be
intuitively
true.
know that, too. So I think on some level it does continue. It's just that it doesn't continue quite the way we think it does, or quite the way it does when we're in our physical brains. So there is such a thing, I believe, as a purgatory and a hell and a heaven and many heavens and an Asgard and all the things that people think about. I think those things kind of exist in a way. They're not. I don't believe them to be the be all and end all. I believe them to be sort of situational. If you live in a culture where that is the primary belief and you live a life in accordance with that, I think there may be some kind of transitioning into that level of awareness.
I do agree.
And we have such a large universe that all of that exists.
Yeah.
All
I think
of it.
so too. I think we can create that because we are the thing creating everything.
Yeah.
We're part of creation, and we are creation, and we do create.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Well, the Buddha explained that there's the human realm, and the realm below human existence is a realm we're very familiar with, which is the realm of beasts, because we live in the same physical place as the animal consciousness. And then there are consciousnesses below that would be the various purgatories and hells and things. And it's all, again, like you said, it's kind of sort of based on frequency. It's based on karma in this case. The state of your mind will ascend or descend based upon its own nature. And that above the human realm are the realms of the devas, the gods, the angels, and there are places where very high level beings exist. But what's interesting is the Buddha said that, the human realm, is the only one where you can completely break free from all of it.
That statement
interesting.
I've heard before, and it makes me so curious.
Yeah, me too.
Why?
Yeah, why this one?
And it also brings to mind my natural skepticism.
Yeah, me too.
Like my skepticism says, okay, Buddha, how do you know that?
Yeah, right. And he would say, well, meditate and see if you find the same thing
Exactly.
I found.
Exactly.
Right? He wouldn't try to tell you.
No.
He would just, hey, this is what I experienced. Perhaps you'll experience something different.
But wouldn't that be awesome if we could pick his brain?
I know.
Just for the hell of it.
We'd need a translator, but
we would.
Yeah.
We would.
So,
but no, I mean, it's such an absolute statement that it makes me suspicious.
Me too. I sort of wonder if there are exceptions. You know?
Yeah. I mean, because here we are on the Earth. Does that include the Earths of other planetary systems, for example?
Yeah. Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So it kind of
totally
makes me wonder.
Yeah.
And if angels and devas and other things, if karma is the rule among all the realms, then of course there has to be some kind of cyclical or completion point for every frequency.
Yeah, there's got to be,
And maybe we've mistranslated what he meant by that statement too.
That's true. We may not quite fully understand.
Maybe he was referring to a certain level of what can only be resolved on our plane because it only exists on our plane. Not that there aren't other things to have in those other places.
That's a wonderful way to contemplate that.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we have suffering in a way that the Buddha was very concerned with.
Yes.
And maybe that type of suffering only exists here. Therefore, the only way to resolve it is to be here.
Yeah.
For that particular suffering.
Yeah.
But maybe there are other kinds of things
what you just said brings up the idea. The only people that can break out of prison are people that are in prison.
Yeah.
And good point. And if you're out of prison, well, you don't need to break out of prison. So the only place, if you want to break out of prison, you got to be a prisoner first. So if maybe the only thing that can become enlightened is a human because we're in prison. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that.
Exactly.
It's kind of interesting. Interesting idea. I mean, an episode wouldn't be complete unless we got into the Tao Te Ching a little bit.
Oh, of course.
And there are a few pieces, and I'm sort of picking and choosing, and this is a little slightly different translation of the Tao Te Ching that I have. I'm going to read it just a couple pieces, okay? And I wonder what you think about these. This is from chapter 16 in the Tao Te Ching. Empty your mind of all thoughts. Let your heart be at peace. Watch the turmoil of other beings, but contemplate their return. Each separate being in the universe returns to the common source. Returning to the source is serenity. If you don't realize the source, you stumble in confusion and sorrow. When you realize where you come from, you naturally become tolerant, disinterested, amused, kind-hearted as a grandmother, dignified as a king. Immersed in the Tao, you can deal with whatever life brings you. And when death comes, you are ready.
What is it about the Tao Te Ching that makes you just want to read it over and over and over again?
I know. Makes you kind-hearted as a grandmother and dignified as a king.
Mm-hmm. That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
That's that distinction that I'm so fond of kindness versus niceness.
Oh yeah, kindness versus niceness.
Only a king could be the kind that a king could be,
So well.
And so well said, doing a kind act from a place of power rather than from reflex or compulsion or a need to not have others be displeased with you.
Yeah.
But to do it out of the purity and the authenticity of that power.
Yeah.
And I love that. The Tao Te Ching is so loaded. It's just packed with guidelines that are set into dualities that make it easier for you to kind of navigate your way.
Yes.
A way that fits you because it has that duality. It has the polarity is what I meant to say. From each extreme, and you just kind of aim between those two places, and it sort of brings you forward.
It's so balanced and perfect.
Yeah.
You know, it really is. Yeah, that was well put. Let's see. You ready for this one?
Yeah, what you got?
This is just a line from chapter 22 of the Tao Te Ching. If you want to become full, let yourself be empty. If you want to be reborn, let yourself die. It's also interesting because in Western cultures, we sort of, for the most part, we sort of have a desire to want to reincarnate.
Mm-hmm.
We would view reincarnation as a good thing. Yet what's odd about it is the Hindus and the Buddhists look at it as a bad thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, you didn't pull it off. You didn't become enlightened. Oh man.
You didn't escape the cycle.
Yeah, back to the start of the line, you know. And so it's funny how we look at that as, oh, reincarnation, oh thank goodness.
Yeah.
I don't want to stop existing. And they look at it as, oh, you still exist. Oh, sorry. You know.
Better luck next time.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Game over.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Something we probably should mention in this episode is the Tibetan Book of the Dead. You know, I know there's a lot of people that have some curiosity about that and not quite sure what that is. And me as a college educator, as a university educator, one of my skills, or at least I think it's one of my skills, is to take something that's pretty complicated and make it real simple.
Yep.
And
You do have a talent for that.
I have simplified the Tibetan Book of the Dead. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
Crash course.
When you're alive, there are 3 states according to the Tibetan Book of the Dead. There's your normal everyday living consciousness, like what we're doing right now. There is meditation, which is a second consciousness, and then there are dreams. And those are the 3 consciousnesses that happen in life, the 3 states. And they call a state a bardo.
Okay.
So the Tibetan word is bardo. Okay. The Tibetan Book of the Dead is the bardo todal. Okay. And so there's 3 states we could be in while we're alive. When we die, we go into a different bardo. We go into a different state. It's the in-between state. In between what, we might ask, though? In between lives, in between births. Are you ready? Here are the 3 states of the in-between.
I'm ready.
At the moment of death, there is a brief light. It's like a light of truth. And that's our opportunity to merge with everything. But according to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, it happens so quickly we miss it. So we die, there's a moment of pure light, we miss it. Oh! Then we go into the second bardo, the second state, which is where we are able to see, it is revealed to us, all of the former Buddhas, the Devas, the divine beings, and we sort of have, contact with them. The third bardo, the third state in the in-between, is about hallucination. So based upon our karma, we begin to have hallucinations, and they are hallucinations of hellish realms or heavenly realms. But the idea is we tire of them. And by tiring of them, we seek the familiarity of being born again. And it pulls us into reincarnation and we're born again. And so those are the 3 states of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. You die, there's a light. Don't miss it, because if you miss it, it's too late. See you next time.
Too late.
Right? Then you get to meet, all your heavenly superheroes and the people you're a big fan of, right? And that's nice. Then you're going to hallucinate to the point of wishing you were just back in a body, and then you're born again.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then
you're a baby again. Yeah. Or something else, a puppy or whatever.
And anything beyond that?
Yeah. And you're anything beyond that.
I mean, I guess what's beyond that is escape, right? I mean,
escape.
Nirvana, right? Nirvana, extinction.
Nirvana, yeah, which would be, which the Buddha called a state of mind. Yeah, nirvana, a state of mind, yeah.
I have noticed in life that there, at least for me, in my experience, there are events and occurrences that have layered meanings. Many layers of meanings in there.
Yeah.
And sometimes the form that it takes is just convenient. It's using what's available.
Okay.
Like when we notice that the dream that we're having happens to have some characters from our recent experience or from the past. It's not necessarily having to do with those people.
Yeah.
But they are conveniences of the mind that the mind will use to represent what it wants to represent in the form of creating feelings for you.
Yeah.
And if it needs to do it in that way, the logical mind will try to read it as though the individual characters are important. But it isn't necessarily.
Yeah.
The theme might be way more important than the characters themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
that
you're
there's
right.
something that's being kind of conveyed as a feeling.
Yeah.
And I think that could be with death as
Yeah,
well. You know,
I think you're right.
the sort of heavens and hells that people experience.
Definitely. And you know what's interesting is earlier I had mentioned that my cat Neo had to be put down recently.
Neo with the tuxedo.
Neo with the tuxedo, little tuxedo boy. And by the way, his nickname was Neobana, so Nibbana is the Pali word for nirvana, enlightenment. So I called him
Gotcha.
Neobana Pontificus Montgomery. That was his full name.
Was that on his birth certificate?
Yeah.
Okay.
We couldn't fit it on his little name tag though.
Oh, okay.
So he had died that day, and that night I had a dream about him, and he jumped up on my lap, and for a split second I was annoyed that he jumped up on my lap, and then as he slinked past me, I remember, feel him and enjoy this because he's gone.
Wow.
And it's kind of like what you were talking about. It can represent a feeling or an emotion, and I think there was a little part of me that was a little guilty, you know, for having some regrets about him, you know. And then there was also, but there were so many times in my life and his life that I did that, and I pet him. I'm just like, this is a special moment with this little guy. Just enjoy him right now, and that's the lesson for all of us, you know. Carlos, I enjoy every moment with you.
Likewise.
Because, you know, and that's what it's about, you know. And I know there's TED Talks on this, and there's her name has eluded me, but there's a wonderful I think psychologist who wrote a book about the 5 lessons that she learned from people on hospice, and I wish I could recall her name right now. And you know, like one of the lessons was nobody ever said they wished they worked harder.
Yeah.
You know, people said they worked too hard, basically. You know what I mean? You know, things like that. And really, really what matters in life is the connections you make, the people you love, how much you love them. You know what I mean? And if I stop and I look back and I say, gosh, do I really love and care for the people that are around me? I'm like, yeah, you know, I really do. All right, good. I that's not something I'll have no regrets with that. You know, loved people. Yeah. And that's number 1 on the list, is just that. Just go ahead and love everybody.
Yeah, and you know, one of the ways to get at purpose when you're trying to find out what purpose is, because this is a question that people have. They say, I don't know what my purpose is, you know.
Yeah.
And they don't know where to begin. So sometimes I'll ask the question, if you knew you were going to die, is there anything that you feel that you would regret? Start with the negative.
Yeah.
And then work backwards from there.
Okay. Yeah, that's...
You know, what would you regret? You know, what would you regret not doing? What would you regret not having? What would you regret not achieving? What would you regret not saying? And then look inside of that for clues about what kind of person is that? That's identity, right?
Yeah.
And what does a person that is like that do? There's purpose.
Oh, what is... Okay.
You know, so that's another way of getting at your purpose, your mission, your vision, is by thinking about, hey, you know, death is around the corner, so will you feel totally satisfied and peaceful and, you know, elevated when you die, or will you feel like you missed out on something, like you missed the bus, or you know, somehow didn't catch the train on time, you know, like what is it that you would feel sorrowful about, regretful about?
Yeah.
And is there anything from your own past that you haven't repaired or closed the loop on or dealt with? You know?
Yeah, definitely.
Because that's going to tell you a lot.
It does.
And so death can be that really wonderful mirror.
Yeah. It's certainly an accelerant. You know what I mean? It gets you to your important conclusions and decisions pretty quickly. You know?
It defines things in the way that cold defines things.
Yeah.
It makes you choose.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess, we don't know what's going to happen. I think some of the themes for tonight, it's okay to be afraid. Mm-hmm. It's also okay not to be afraid.
Yeah.
And we don't know, but, as humanity, we came into existence together. Mm-hmm. We can all hold hands as we go. I mean, even though we don't know what's going to happen, hey, we have each other, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what more could we want but to have each other in humanity?
Yep.
What more could we want? So.
Yeah, it's going to happen. I have a feeling that, in our group, we've got people who care about we all care about our health.
Yeah.
And so barring some kind of surprise curveball or whatever. Stuff happens. But barring that, I mean, we'll probably live to a pretty healthy age.
Yeah.
And so we got a lot of time left.
Yeah.
But it's going to happen.
Yeah. I think what's hard for me to fathom is just not creating and loving the way that I currently do. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe the idea is, because this is fun. It's fun to create and love like this. And yeah, life can sometimes be miserable too. But I think it's hard for me to fathom the idea that when I'm gone, I won't be creating the way I am now. Mm-hmm. But if we get back to that place where we were when we were the universe that was about to create everything, then we could explode again with creation, so maybe it's awesomer, so, but we're going to find out, aren't we? Mm-hmm. We're going to find out.
You've been listening to The Authenticity Show with your hosts Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. 100 episodes in and we're still going strong. And to all our listeners, thank you so much. We really appreciate you listening to our show. If you have a minute, post something about us on social media. Tell your friends about the show. We would really appreciate that. And please make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you get your podcasts and you're hooked up with us on social media. And you can find our website at authenticityshow.com. Thanks for listening. Have an authentic day.